Do you feel like that interview shifted the future of the monarchy?
If I talk about it at all and say anything at all, that becomes a headline. So what I've sort of decided is just to try and take a vow of silence on the subject, preferably for the rest of my life. Should we go into that village? You know, it's just been hit by a mortar. We could end up with a massive exclusive. On the other hand, they could mortar it again and then they get us. Big exclusive, death.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just debate that for a bit. I love traveling. I just love it. I love getting on a plane. I love going somewhere new. I love going somewhere not new. That's India. Just always in your face, never boring, full of culture and life and history, and an incredible place, really.
Tom, welcome to the Travel Diaries. It is lovely to meet you. I feel like I know you because I see you every night on the TV screen. How are you?
I'm very good. Do you know the funniest thing about being in the news? I've sometimes been around, like on with a film star or a TV star, and you watch people come up to them, and they're very sort of respectful. Whereas when anyone meets someone on the news, it's like they had a previous conversation that was interrupted halfway through, and it's just hilarious. It's kind of actually really endearing part of my job, because people just come up and start chatting to you, and it's always they don't say, "Oh, hi, you're Tom Bradby." They just say, "Well, you know, that Donald Trump is blah," or "Yeah, Keir Starmer, I'm so," it really amuses me.
That's so funny. Is travel an important part of your life?
Yes. I spent a while as a foreign correspondent. I've travelled a lot through my work generally, both before being a foreign correspondent and afterwards. I love travelling. I just love it. I love getting on a plane. I love going somewhere new. I love going somewhere not new. I mean, there's a few places I haven't necessarily enjoyed every second of. Certainly when you're a foreign correspondent, going somewhere dangerous has a slightly different texture to it. You know, definitely places where I stayed up all night, unable to sleep, thinking about whether I really should be going to whatever the dangerous place it was. But yeah, I love travel, and it has been part of my life from a relatively early age. And I guess when I was growing up, I had some quite formative experiences traveling. So, and I will want to travel till I die. I just love it.
Well, it sounds like
I'm in the right place.
You're the right place.
Okay.
We're going to uncover the 7 chapters of your life's travel diaries today. And I know it would be hard to whittle it down, but we go back to the beginning, to your childhood with chapter 1, and that is your earliest childhood travel memory.
I think the one I'm going to pick is going to Gibraltar. So when my dad was in the Navy, in a way that seems weird now, a lot of my childhood he was just away. I mean, he was away on a ship for 8 months, 10 months, a year. More than once, I mean, quite regularly. But I think my dad was on a ship called Devonshire, and it was attached to the Mediterranean fleet. And he was basically going to be in the Med for 8 months or a year. And what my mum discovered was that she was entitled to a married quarter in Gibraltar. And my mother was quite adventurous, and she obviously thought, well, I don't want to stay in rainy Britain with my 6-year-old son. I was an only child. So why don't we just go and live in Gibraltar? So we got on a train and we travelled all through France and all through Spain to get to Gibraltar. And my memories of it are so vivid. I can remember my mum, who spoke virtually no French and no Spanish at all, imitating a sleeper train on the train platform in Madrid, which I found absolutely mortifying. I found that bit of it sort of vaguely traumatic. But then we got to Gibraltar, and I went to school there, a pretty rough military school, I think, somewhere out on the point. And I loved it. You know, it was just it was sunny. It was a bit exotic. I went swimming in Rosier Bay every day. It was it was a really, really wonderful experience.
How long were you there for?
We were there about 7-8 months. My mum later told me that my dad's ship only actually came in once in that time. And I don't really remember my dad much there. Oddly enough, now my mum has gone, when I think of her, it's often in Gibraltar, funnily enough. I think it was a
really
very
formative.
Yeah, it made me love the sun and the Med and the sea. I mean, the changing schools is obviously but I obviously fitted in okay. I remember being in a gang. I mean, I'm like 6. Let's not exaggerate, but I remember at one point being chased by another gang, and the gang and jumping off a wall and landing on a nail went through my foot, and the gang leader taking me back to my mum, who's absolutely tore a lot of strips off him. But yeah, it was a really good time. So I would pick that. The other place I would mention is when I was born in Malta, and we went back to live there for 8 or 9 months when I was 3. And although I don't have any direct memory of it, when I've just finished making this TV drama Secret Service, which is out very soon, it was based on one of my books, and we partly shot it in Malta.
Yeah.
And we spent 2 weeks there, and I had all the family out, and my kids are in their late 20s, and they were working from home from there, and I was on set every day, and it was just a really, really, I mean, I'm so thrilled with how the drama turned out, which really helps. But it was a really wonderful and magical experience being there. But the whole Malta of it all was quite a thing for me, and I felt quite emotional about it. And I had this weird sense that it felt like a bit like home and familiar in a way I couldn't quite quantify.
A full circle moment, and then your family being there too.
Yeah, and I don't know whether that's just mystical, nonsense that I've convinced myself of, but it did feel. And maybe the Gibraltar, which is kind of quite different from Malta, but has some similarities. I don't know whether that whole double experience of living in Malta at 3 and Gibraltar at 6 created this kind of thing. But I certainly directly remember Gibraltar, and Malta is more of a feeling.
And I mean, it's so exciting that was shot there. What is it that you love about Malta as a destination?
Well, it's incredibly beautiful.
It's so much more historic than some people may realise.
Yeah, I mean, Valletta, what a city. Yeah. And the colour of the sea, everything about it is... I mean, there are bits of it where, if they had their time again, maybe they'd develop tourism slightly differently. But most of it, I thought, was stunningly beautiful. I mean, I've got to tell you, it's an absolutely amazing place to shoot a TV drama. And hopefully lots of people will visit having watched it.
What are some of the main sites? Because the show really it's shot in some of the really key sites in Malta.
Well, I'd go to Valletta, and I would spend quite a lot of time there because Valletta is stunningly beautiful. Just wandering around Valletta is amazing. Mm-hmm. We didn't go on this trip to Gozo because we filmed all on Malta itself, but I have been on a swimming holiday of all things to Gozo separately. We went a couple of years before, which I absolutely loved as well.
Gozo's a different island.
Gozo's a different island, you have to go to, but it's kind of quieter, and it's got really beautiful coves and incredible. And if you like open water swimming, I mean, the most incredible swims along long cliff edges, water that's in incredible visibility and perfect sort of colour. So Gozo was lovely. But on Malta, Rabat is really amazing old town. It's near my birthplace of Mtafa, so we went there, went to the old naval hospital, which is now deserted, but it was, my kids found that very funny, clearly, going to Dad's birthplace. Yeah. This really, really was for me, and I ended up incredibly proud of it. So I look back and feel slightly mystical about the whole experience, really, like Malta, a cast you really like, they're all incredibly likeable, a director you really love, a producer you really love. So the whole thing was one of the best experiences. Yeah, it was one of the best experiences of my working life for sure. But go to Malta, and not just because I was born there. Don't let that put you off.
Well, let's move on to chapter 2. And that is the first place that you fell in love with.
Well, it's a place called Alps in Austria, which most people will never have heard of. It's a tiny ski resort in the Austrian Alps, regularly voted the prettiest village in Tyrol and I think possibly Austria. Mm. I first went there when I was 5, and I loved it immediately, but more pertinently when I was 12, we moved to Germany. My father went to work at the embassy there, and we moved to this house in Bonn. And I basically got into ski racing. It's the very short version of this story. I loved skiing, and somehow the idea came up that I was going to go and train with one of these alpine clubs, and I ended up going to join the Outback Visitors Ski Club. So I would guess somewhere between 7 and 10 weeks a year in the Alps. So about 4 weeks or 5 weeks over Christmas, and then maybe 3 weeks over Easter, and then we'd go summer training in a glacier nearby. And slalom was my thing, and I don't want to imply that I was a serious top level skier, but probably for about 4 years, I was trying, 5 years maybe, I was trying pretty hard and sort of gradually starting near the bottom, working my way up the rankings of the British Junior Championships. Didn't get near the top, but then I stopped before I would have been in that age range anyway. And there are kind of reasons why I stopped. I learned to not love ski racing and decided to stop it. But what I never lost was the love of this kind of tiny Austrian village where we all trained next to the local kids, and I just sort of loved it, and it's become a second home to me.
Wow, I didn't know that about you. What an amazing
it's a bit of a random fact, isn't it?
Yeah. Can you paint a picture of what it's like if it's one of the prettiest?
It's just a tiny little resort, and it has a group of, it's sort of the centre of it is on a kind of a sort of S bend. It's got really pretty church. It's got some, it's just all every bit chocolate boxy Austrian Alps. I've been there quite a lot in summer with my wife, and we love it in summer. It's the most incredible walking. And the skiing's a bit more extensive. When I was there, your average day would start at 8:30 on the slalom run in Inner Outback and would probably end. One of the trainers I had could be quite bad-tempered, so if he didn't think we were trying hard enough, he would ban us from taking the lift, and we'd have to ski the slalom and then take our skis off and walk back up and then ski down. That was a really bad day. But and I ended up sort of falling out of love with ski racing because it's a very binary, if you're at the British Junior Championships and you're in the start gate and you're starting at number 35 or something and you're not going to win or near the top, but you want to do your best and you've trained for this for 4 weeks, and you come out the start gate and you catch an edge on the third gate and crash out, and then you have your trainers and your parents saying, "Oh, what went wrong, Tom?" And you'll be like, "Well, I bloody fell over, didn't I? That's what's wrong." And I just found the sort of whole feeling that I'd let people down really awful. So I sort of fell out of love with the ski racing part.
And so you mentioned then, so you lived in Malta, Gibraltar, in Bonn.
Yeah.
So do you think that is what gave you that curiosity for the world that then led you into journalism?
I think it probably is. I think it gave me a love of, I really love everything I do. I really love my work with ITN. I've been with ITN for 36 years, which when I say out loud sounds demented, but I really loved it as a trainee when I walked in through the door, and I still do. And yeah, I was incredibly engaged with the world. I can remember, I guess I must have been 12 or 13, going to Berlin, and in those days you could go through into East Berlin in a diplomatic car. My dad couldn't go because he was in the military, but my mum and I went one day through Checkpoint Charlie, through the Berlin Wall into the east. And I was riveted, of course. It was just, I was a 12-year-old talking about sort of East versus West.
Yeah.
And that made an absolutely monumental impression on me. And I think part of my love, Len Deighton died a short time ago. He's probably my favourite spy writer, up there with Le Carré. But his Berlin Game Set and Match series is one of my all-time favourite reading matter. And if you read my trilogies, Secret Service, Double Agent and Triple Cross, which the TV drama is based on the first of the books, but it's fairly obvious that I was inspired by Len Deighton. But again, the kind of greyness of the East and the way Len Deighton portrayed it, I probably read Berlin Game not long after I was in Germany for that period. So I would absolutely draw a line, not only to my journalism, but also to my writing from that period. Yeah, as a young boy.
And when you first started reporting abroad as a foreign correspondent, was there a place that captivated you, despite what was perhaps going on around you?
I was Asia correspondent, so I travelled, but that said, I spent a lot of time in America. I think it's kind of weird when I look back on it, why you had such a strong reaction to a place for or against. I loved India. India was just fascinating to me. And quite a lot of what I did in India was could be a bit grim. I mean, I went to cover an earthquake in Gujarat. I spent 12 days sleeping in a graveyard because that was the only place with walls that were standing, and we were trying to protect our kit, and there wasn't a single building in a town that had previously inhabited 20,000 people that was left standing, and many of the people were very sadly buried beneath the rubble, and it was quite a traumatic experience. If you've ever covered an earthquake in a hot climate, it's really terrible, let me tell you. And so I had like bad experiences in India, but I think just before that, literally, the reason I was in India, I'd been to cover the Kumbh Mela, which is the world's biggest religious festival, which from memory, I think happens near Varanasi. And we went to cover it as a human phenomenon because on one day, the most auspicious day in the month, happens every 12 years. At that time, around 35 million people, I think it's now nearer to 70, tried to get down to one point on the Ganges between sun up and sunset. I mean, like, you 35 million people in one place. I mean, that is... And after we did that, and which was kind of an amazing experience. Then we went to...
But how do you cover that even safely? Like...
Well, I tell you what, there's no mechanization. Like if you have certainly when I covered it, you have a heart attack in the middle of that, you're going to die. You know, you want to be really basic. You want to go to the loo, you go to the loo. I mean, there's no like public toilets, and there's no medical facilities, and there's no helicopters landing. I mean, it was just one enormous motorway of people going in and one enormous motorway of people coming out. I mean, I don't know how many M25s of us, but just vast numbers of people.
Unfathomable, really.
Unfathomable.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the whole point of it. And trying to give a sense of that scale was quite difficult, but it was an unforgettable experience. And then we had this sort of reverse experience with the earthquake, which was pretty traumatic. And then I remember we were leaving India, flying back to Delhi from an airport in Ahmedabad, and I was so tired, like I hadn't slept. It was like 40 degrees in the day, 3 degrees at night. Wow. I didn't really have a proper sleeping bag, so I hadn't eaten properly for days, had like 2 hours sleep a night, so I was pretty much at the end of my tether. But was sort of sitting there, all of my team comatose in the airport, and suddenly basically, I can't think of any other way of describing it than this enormous fight starts over the airline check-in, and our Indian fixer is saying, well, yeah, these people think that the airline staff have sold their tickets to someone. It's like this enormous fist fight. It's like we're at the OK Corral. You know, it happens in the middle of the airport. And I just thought, that's India. Just always in your face, never boring, full of culture and life and history, and an incredible place, really.
Well, I mean, it sounds pretty formative. Chapter 3 is the place where you learnt the most about yourself. Where would you pick for that?
Well, I would say the obvious choice for me would be Jakarta. I got shot in Jakarta and had a pretty bad 24 hours, I suppose. And it showed a lot of my life at that time in sharp relief. So what I mean by that is I'd been in Jakarta for a while at that point. It's not a city I overly love anyway. I mean, I haven't been back there, funnily enough, since I got shot.
Where were you shot?
I was shot. You mean in my body or physically in my lower? I had a sort of rocket flare went through the middle of my lower right leg. It was basically after the dictator Suharto fell. There were democratic elections. Would have been a year or two later, and basically Megawati Sukarnoputri, who was the daughter of Sukarno, who'd been the president of Indonesia at independence, she won the largest part of the vote, and her supporters, who were a kind of paramilitary army all dressed in black with red berets, came down to Jakarta and made very clear that if she wasn't, because she didn't have a majority, wasn't voted by MPs in as the new leader, then there would be hell to pay. And MPs in their wisdom decided not to vote her in, and so there was hell to pay, and the whole sort of city got ripped to bits. And I was in the middle of a massive conflagration between protesters and the parliament, and it just
you were caught in the kind of
I was caught in the middle, and someone fired a rocket flare right through the middle of my leg. And what I mean by where I learned most about myself, though, is that I think I mentioned before that when I was going into dangerous places, I didn't have the thrill I would normally have. Like if I was going to cover the Kumbh in India, I'd be really excited about getting in a plane. If I was going to the war in Kosovo, I'd be excited because you're always excited by a big story, but there'd be a kind of knot turning in the bottom of your stomach.
Yeah.
And I had 3 young kids by then.
Wow.
And I just found myself, so there'd been a lot of trouble in East Timor before I got shot in Jakarta. And I remember staying up all night before I went, and my wife waking up and said, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I just can't sleep. I think, what if I never see you and the kids again?" And I'd found it quite, it'd begun to torture me in a way. Probably wouldn't now, if I'm really honest, if now my kids are grown up, but it really did. I wanted my whole life to be a foreign correspondent for some of the reasons we talked about at the start. It had been in my blood to want to get out there and see the world and report on things firsthand. And here I was reporting on very exciting things, but I was tending to torture myself about whether it was, responsible as a dad to be doing this. And I kept on thinking, I had this sort of story I played in my head of, imagining my oldest son at 10 and someone saying, something about, what's your dad's name? Oh, no, he's not my dad. He's my stepdad. Oh, what happened to your dad? Oh, well, he died. Where did he die? Oh, he died in Jakarta. And that really kind of played on a loop inside my head. And so I thought being shot really brought that into stark relief, because I thought, and my wife and I weirdly had quite different psychological reactions, because before it happened and when I was going somewhere dangerous and worried about it, she'd say, well, you say you can do it safely, so just trust to that and do it. And so after I got shot, I was like, well, I got shot and survived. This is fantastic. I can go anywhere and do anything. And she's like, are you smoking something funny? Like, what the hell? Like, you told me you could do it safely and now you've been shot, so you obviously can't. And I really think you should can it. And ultimately I did.
Being a foreign correspondent.
Yeah. I mean, I did it for about another year and a half, but I kind of took the decision. I couldn't be deployed anywhere dangerous for the following year anyway, because I couldn't run properly. And I basically took the decision that I was going to wind it down and stop it.
And are you happy you did?
I think I have the greatest admiration for long-term foreign correspondents. And, I have so many people I work with have had hair-raising experiences. I ended up being shot, but plenty of other people had just as bad experiences in some ways, but didn't get physically harmed. And I don't think it's worth the stress it's causing me.
Yeah.
And, to some extent, I don't think that's necessarily about the risk or not risk per se, because there's risks in lots of things, right? It's a question about how you manage the psychology of risk. Yeah. If you can go into it, as a lot of people who are successful long-term at it, with a more phlegmatic attitude, I could die cycling to work. Fate will do what fate's going to do. If that's your attitude and you can stick to that, then I think it's much easier to do that kind of job than it is if you're always trying to work out what threat's going to come around the corner tomorrow and mitigate it. And the final thing maybe I'd say about being a foreign correspondent, which is so hard, almost the most stressful thing about it, I came to be rather sort of jealous of military people who, yes, were taking more risks per se, but they had training and a purpose and a logic. Whereas when you're a journalist, it's like, well, should we go into that village? Could be a massive, it's just been hit by a mortar. We could end up with a massive exclusive. On the other hand, they could mortar it again and then they get us.
Yeah.
And you
evaluate that.
Evaluate that, and you big exclusive death.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just debate that for a bit. And that, I found that so stressful. You sit around, what's the right answer? We sort of left East Timor effectively at gunpoint when that was a big story. And there were reports that the Indonesians were massacring people inside, and which they weren't on the scale that there were lots of things going on, but not like massacres at that particular point. But we didn't know that. And to cut a very long story short, we had the potential possibility to go back in and get a flight landed and, maybe have an exclusive in showing what was or wasn't going on. And I remember sitting around with the team and saying, right, okay, we're going to have a conversation in this room. All I'm going to tell the news desk in London is that we're going or we're not going. I'm never going to say who didn't want to go. And I went around the room and everyone said, well, I'll do it if you want to do it, Tom. And I was like, oh
my God, no pressure.
Great. Anyway, yeah.
And
well, we decided to go and then didn't manage to take off and wasted a lot of money hiring a plane because the person who told us we had clearance turned out to be a liar. But hey,
God, the roller coaster of foreign correspondence. Wow, what an amazing chapter of your life. We move on now to chapter 4, and that is your all-time favourite destination. What brings you the most joy when you think about it?
Sydney.
I
thought really hard about this because there's so many places that I love, and I've been lucky enough to go to some great places through work. I've been on some wonderful holidays. Like we went to Namibia on a family holiday a few years ago, which I absolutely loved. Not the first time I'd been there, but I really loved it. But I think my wife and I were in Sydney before Christmas. When we left Hong Kong, when I was winding up being a foreign correspondent, as I said, was doing pretty well as a novelist, and we did very seriously think about me leaving ITN. My wife's a jewelry designer and she was doing really well as well with that, and we thought, why don't we didn't feel ready to come back to the UK, and we thought, why don't we go to Sydney, because we'd been to Australia quite a bit on holiday from Hong Kong. I'd gone there to recuperate after being shot, and there's something about Sydney, the sunshine, the beaches, the boardwalks, the food, the outdoor life, the sunny optimism that both of us, my wife was actually born in Australia, her dad was in the Navy as well, and just happened to be there. But yeah, it sort of speaks to us on some level, and we try to go back every other year or so. And when I say to people in the newsroom, like, they're like, well, you're not here for the next few years, where are you? I'm going to Australia. I'm like, what, again? And my wife has some family there, so I usually use that as an excuse, and we do go to see them, but mostly it's because we just love it.
Oh, I have to say, I've never been. It's
really?
On my bucket list. I just like you say, the kind of sunny optimism of it all. I mean,
it's a long way away, which is a pain in the neck. But once you get there, it's really, with little kids, definitely so. But when you get there, it's so worth it. And this time we were there, we rented an apartment high up above Bondi Beach, and it was quite weird because it was about 3 weeks before that attack, and the pictures of people running off the beach was exactly the walk we used to do. So that was pretty weird. But my wife and I are sort of really big swimmers, so we sort of wandered down to the Bondi Icebergs sea pool every morning, and like your day begins with a swim against this amazing sunny sky, and then you head out for a breakfast in the sunshine, and I don't know, it's pretty hard for a day to feel bad after that.
Oh, sounds gorgeous. Such a nice quality of life out there.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to live there, actually. I mean, it feels a long way. I mean, in a way, what's wonderful about it is it feels very cut off from the rest of the world, even if you go there for a short time. And I think that probably would be why I wouldn't want to live. I definitely wouldn't want to live there, and all our family and friends are here. But it's definitely, for the rest of our lives, I think we'd really love to spend some time there. I mean, probably if we could, we'd go every winter for a bit. But yeah.
So you know it really well. What are your go-to favourite spots that you go every single time?
We definitely go to the Bondi Icebergs to swim pretty much every morning. There's a great pool in Bronte as well. I mean, in fact, there are really good sea pools all the way up and down it. We always go to Bill's and Bondi for breakfast. Bill Granger, who sadly died recently.
Oh, yeah.
Great kind of breakfast lunch spot. So that's fantastic.
What do you order?
Pancakes in my case. My wife doesn't, but they do a really delicious ricotta pancake in Bill's. So yeah, I would really recommend that. I mean, there you can walk, I think, from Coogee, sort of south of Bondi, all the way up to Manly. So that's a walk that goes ultimately over Sydney Harbour Bridge, and then all the way around the North Shore. I think there's like 86 kilometres of boardwalk. And what we tend to do is like we'll get out, have a swim at breakfast, and then we'll go and do some walking. And you just sort of Uber to the place where you finished the day before, and then walk for 3 hours, stop for lunch. And so It's kind of outdoor
quite an
life.
active holiday.
Yes,
Yeah.
outdoor life for us.
So then you were also a royal correspondent. As a big chapter, notable chapter of your life.
Very short, actually. I was only royal correspondent for 2 years. Not that you'd believe that if you read my cuttings, but yeah, I was in fact very briefly royal correspondent.
And you also travelled with Harry and Meghan to Africa for their documentary, which was a watershed moment. You know, it was the moment that Harry said that he was going on a different path to William. Do you feel like that interview shifted the future of the monarchy?
Well, what I have learned, I'm a journalist, and so when I am asked about the royal family, when I've been asked over the years, I've always felt like I should try and answer honestly, wisely or unwisely. And obviously there was a long period where, even though I was like royal correspondent actually only from 2001 to 2003, the tail of it, I went on to be UK editor, and then I went on to be political editor for 10 years. But obviously the tail of that job lasted a pretty long time. And every time I was asked about it, I felt like, well, there's no reason not to talk about it. And I always try to answer a question as openly as I can. Because I just think as a journalist you should. What I've unfortunately discovered in the last 4, 5, 6 years is that if I talk about it at all and say anything at all, then that becomes a headline. So what I've sort of decided, and I'm really sorry about this, and it's not very helpful, and it's, probably not very helpful for your listeners, but it's just a decision I've come to, is to just try and take a vow of silence on the subject, preferably for the rest of my life. Which, let's see, but there's so many royal commentators who have so much to say, and I just don't want to be one of them.
Is it something that you've kind of moved on in terms of like your personal relationships as well?
Again, anything I say about that just gets turned into a headline, and my personal relationships, or whatever they are, I felt like I had to, when asked about that, reflect on it before, but I've sort of realised I don't. So I'm going to sort of very politely, respectfully, much as I like you and I'm enjoying this interview, going to try and avoid getting into this one, because it just creates an awful lot of clickbait.
God, it makes you think how tedious it must be for them if it's this difficult for you.
Well, it's just a reflection of the reality, isn't it? Really, yeah. I mean, people are interested. If you're somebody who is perceived to know things, then anything you say is gonna blow up. And I've just had to accept that. I mean, I don't think that's my start point as a journalist, clearly, because I am on the record over the years. But I think I've just had to learn a bit of self-discipline about it, really. So this is massively unhelpful for your interview.
Not at all. No, I actually just find it. I just find it I find it interesting.
It's complicated. I mean, the thing I would maybe say, and this doesn't have. I don't say this particularly germane to the royal family bit of it, but it's just, obviously I've been a journalist working in national news for 36 years. I've developed relationships with all kinds of people in all walks of life, politicians and all the rest of it, and that's a kind of complicating factor, because you want to get to know people, because you want to know what's going on. You want people to tell you the truth about things. But then obviously you develop personal relationships, and that gets complicated. And I think the job of managing that is maybe more complicated than you think it is when you first start. Particularly if someone's like a prime minister or a leader of the opposition or something like that, and you're maybe being a bit disobliging about something they've done on the news, but you then having dinner with them the following Wednesday, those are kind of quite nuanced complications. So you want to know them because you want to know what's in their heads, and you want to be able to report it to your audience. But at the same time, maybe you really like them, and therefore, quite like them or get on with them. So I don't know, they don't really teach you that in journalism training. It's something you have to work out. Yeah, it's like relationship building and like straddling this nuance. Yeah, and I try really hard to keep confidences, which isn't the world's most useful trait in a journalist, I sometimes think, because you kind of think, right, well, I know lots of things, but I can't report half of them. So, but I guess I'd rather know and feel that what you are reporting, is truthful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we move on to chapter 5, and that is your hidden gem, a place that you love that maybe my listeners don't know so much about.
I wanted to pick something slightly random because I don't think it's a hidden gem, but I wanted to pick Stockholm because over the last few years, we've been a couple of times on a summer holiday to Sweden. We went once with our kids. We rented a house up on the Stockholm Archipelago, and my wife and I liked it so much. We went back last year, and we didn't rent a house, but we stayed in a couple of hotels because the kids weren't with us. And it is so lovely. I mean, it's the Swedish summer vibe is a thing. I mean, when I say who knew, it's like lots of people knew. The Swedes knew, but I didn't know. And don't get me wrong, I love a Greek summer holiday or wherever you want to go in the Med, and Malta, blah blah, as we've discussed earlier. And we love doing that. But Sweden was it's just the whole business of everyone has their house out on the water, and not everyone. A lot of people have houses on the water, and they have their sauna and their jetty, and they get on boats and go up to tour the islands. And I don't know, they're just the whole. If you've been there in the summer, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Long days as well.
Long days, great food, incredibly friendly people. Just the whole vibe bit was really, really spectacular. I really loved it.
I think that really is a hidden gem, the archipelago in particular. For anyone who hasn't been there, is it easy to get into the vibe and the culture if you're not Swedish?
I would say it is. It's very relaxed. It's not very fancy. We were staying, the first year we rented a house out in, I think it was called Rosaro, which is out near Vaxholm. So it's about 40 minutes out of Stockholm. Well, first of all...
Did you drive or you go on boat?
Well, we hired a car and we drove to this house, and basically it's 40 minutes out of central Stockholm, but it feels like it's a million miles away. So you can go to Vaxholm and get the ferry into Stockholm, which from memory takes about 50 minutes, and it goes all the way down the archipelago. So you just see this amazing house after amazing house. I don't mean like rich, fantastic, incredible house. I just mean
they're often quite simple in that.
They're very simple, often, not all of them, some of them are quite fancy, but a lot of them are very simple. And there's just like a house painted yellow or blue normally, sauna, jetty, into the water. And if we wanted to go in Stockholm, we'd maybe get the ferry in, have a wander around, have a few drinks, have dinner. One night we wandered up to some place above Stockholm where you can watch the sunset or the sun begin to fade over the city, which was really beautiful. And then we just get an Uber back to the house or the ferry if you're in time. But yeah, it was just the whole, and we did find it, up around Rosaro and Vaxholm, you go out to dinner and you think, oh, this is going to be terribly fancy, but it isn't at all. It's quite sort of plain in a way, but we really loved it.
And I guess as a swimming enthusiast, it's the dream.
It was really, because you just go to the end of the jetty, and sort of my wife and I are kind of quite long distance swimmers, so we sort of probably want to go for an hour or more, and it's just great because you just get in your wetsuit and off you go straight from the end of the jetty, and you swim around the bay or whatever, and it's absolutely fantastic.
So you'd need a wetsuit, would you, to get in? Is it pretty
chilly? I don't
chilly?
think you'd need one. I think for us, if we're swimming a decent long distance, partly I'm incredibly lazy and it's much easier swimming in a wetsuit. But yeah, it's more comfortable if you're going to swim a long distance in a wetsuit. And if you like swimming, then it's a great place. But even if you don't, it's if you just like plunging when you're hot. I mean, maybe we got lucky with the weather, but the last 2 years the weather's been really hot, and so it's
such
perfect
good seasons
temperature.
There, like proper winter,
proper
summer,
proper. Yeah, I went. Funnily enough, I went dog sledding with the youngest son Sam in Finland this year, partly because I wanted to. If we get to series 2 of the drama, you'll see that a Finland dog sledding features, and I wanted.
So you're doing work.
It was a research trip. It was a genuinely research trip, but it was the most. Your mention of seasons, they're kind of wonderful, those countries in summer, but also amazing in winter. And we went up to the north and it was minus 30. It's so beautiful. It was just incredibly beautiful, and it was
like Lapland.
Epic trip. We were literally in Lapland north of Kitila. Dog sledding is an amazing thing to do, by the way.
I would love to do that.
It's an incredible. I mean, it was
with
so
huskies, was it?
With huskies, yeah. We did it for 3 days. We left the main farm, and then we just went out into the wilderness, and we didn't see anyone else. We stayed in 2 huts out in the middle of the wilderness, and we didn't see anyone else, any other sign of human habitation really for 3 days. It was amazing.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was great.
And how did you deal with it being that cold when you're on the sleds? Are you in just massive suits?
It was quite difficult operating, because obviously you think you're okay and then suddenly you're not. You know, you're going along fine, and then suddenly you're really, really cold. Your extremities are really cold, so you have to watch it.
Your eyelashes can turn frozen.
Yeah. And then
the
of course
landscape there is amazing.
Landscape is amazing. Then, of course, if you go around a corner and you're not concentrating, you fall off, and you can't let go of the huskies. So you're literally holding on for dear life as they try and yank you on your side halfway down the thing. But yeah.
Did you see any Northern Lights?
We did. We saw the most incredible Northern Lights. I mean, I honestly think I would say to people, if you're going to see the Northern Lights, probably don't, because your chance of getting a really great Northern Lights aren't that high. But on the other hand, when you do see them, we were on the last night, we were staying in this hut that was up a little bit of a hill. It was a very sort of very bucolic, pretty place. I mean, bloody cold, but kind of amazing. And then we just came out after dark to go and look at the clear sky and just saw the most incredible Northern Lights. I mean, just stunning, absolutely stunning.
I have seen them in Iceland once. Then obviously we saw them through our phones in Wimbledon or wherever we lived.
Well, it's a lot warmer seeing them in Wimbledon through your phone, I would say.
But I imagine seeing them in that completely unpolluted wilderness landscape. It must be quite moving, in fact.
Yeah, it was really, really vivid. It was an incredible experience. It was absolutely lovely, yeah.
And you mentioned just earlier that you'd been skiing in Japan. That sounded amazing. What made you choose to go skiing there?
I think, my poor kids didn't have much choice on the skiing front, as you'd expect from the early bit of the conversation. They were skiing at 2. I said I taught them all myself. They may hold that against me, but and I was like, right, you can snowplow for 2 hours and then you're not snowplowing again. So there was kind of a bit like military school skiing. But anyway, they're all very good skiers, and we love skiing together, all of us. And I think we just had always had on our bucket list going to Japan, and it was our 30th wedding anniversary, and we thought it would be a great. Claude, my wife, and I thought it would be really fun to do a really big, exciting trip together. So we sort of thought about it for about 3 years and then decided to go for it. And I have to say, I'd been to Japan a few times when I was working in Asia, but nothing prepared me for how much I loved it. And I think all of us felt the same, actually. We just really loved it. Everything, the kind of culture, the history, it was amazing.
Well, I guess as somebody who knows ski resorts so well, for you to love it that much, it must have... What was it about it then?
I think it's not just
the contrast.
Well, first of all, if you're into skiing and powder skiing, I do quite a lot of ski touring, and it's just so incredibly light. I've never skied powder like that, but it's just the Japan of it all, really. We went to Niseko, which is the big resort everyone knows, and then we went to a much smaller one called Nozawa Onsen, which was like a little alpine resort, but the Japanese version. It was just so charming. And then we went to Kyoto and Tokyo. But I found, in a way that really surprised me, I just loved everything about it. I loved the food. I know there are downsides to Japanese culture, but the kind of politeness, the orderliness, the calmness. You're in Tokyo, one of the biggest cities in the world, if not the biggest, and everything just seems so calm around you. It's quite uncanny, and I hadn't noticed that so much when I was working there. But going just to soak it up as a tourist was, and just the onsens, the hot baths, and everything. It was amazing.
Plus, our penultimate chapter is your worst travel experience, or the place that you would just never, ever want to go back to.
Going back to my time as foreign correspondent, at the time of the Kosovo War, I was sent to Bari in Italy to basically cover the war from there, because that's where British pilots were taking off from. And I can remember all of us sitting at dinner in some restaurant overlooking Bari Harbour, congratulating ourselves on what an excellent place we'd found to report on the war. And at that point, as if somebody up there was looking at me, my foreign editor called and said, right, we want you to get to northern Albania now. Take your hard car, get on the ferry and then drive. And so...
Bari in Puglia, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We got the ferry to Tirana and drove up to Kukës in the north, from where I then spent 3 weeks covering the Kosovo War. I mean, the Kosovo War was really depressing because there were refugees coming out every day with terrible stories. But all I remember is that road. I'm sure it's fine now. And I probably
do you actually know, Tom, that Albania is like being tipped as the hot new destination?
Well,
have you
I
read
do.
That?
I have. Yeah.
The coast, people are buying up properties.
I know,
there.
and I do want to go back, and this is why I say I feel bad, because I think Albania is a great country and lots of people are going. But at that point,
I imagine a very different time.
The road from Tirana up to Kukës and then honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, it was right up there with being shot and being scared. Just driving it, like
really,
it was this sort of narrow road and. There was no barrier for most of it, and you looked down and you saw all these cars that had been spilt over and then
my God.
burnt out in the thing. And it's like an 8-hour drive, and then there was no hotel in Kukës because it was stuffed full of. There was only one. It was stuffed full of CIA people, so we ended up having to wander around offering people cash for renting an apartment, and we ended up in this pretty grotty apartment. Anyway, it was a rather grueling, depressing, not very nice 3 weeks, and I didn't, I'm afraid, leave with any love of Kukës, northern Albania, but I'm sure it's lovely now. I'm sure it is. Different circumstances, different times, and I would like to go back to the coast. I've heard that is amazing.
It's lovely, isn't it? And, that doesn't sound like a very relaxing stint.
No.
Well, we're on to the final chapter then of your travel diaries. It has been so lovely chatting with you, Tom.
Well, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Chapter 7 is the destinations at the top of your bucket list.
The one place I haven't travelled much through my work is South America, actually. Mm-hmm. And so I have been to quite a few countries in South America, but in the way that my job sometimes delivers. I mean, I often get asked, have you been to place X? And I sort of stare into space for a bit and think, And I feel sort of pathetic. I'm like, surely you must be able to remember everywhere you've been. I mean, surely. But actually, I can't, because sometimes you went for like a day or 2 hours. You know, some politician. I'm pretty sure I've been to Morocco. I'm pretty sure I've been to Tunisia. I'm pretty sure I've been to quite a few of those North African countries. But it probably was on a political trip where I went in for. Anyway, I've got no meaningful memory of them, and that's really been. I've just got finished I've just got a new book out called Red Scorpion, which is about a young doctor called Laura who she's in financial trouble and ends up accepting a job working for a South American businessman and going to work for him in Colombia, and it doesn't turn out to be quite the job she thought. And so we did go and research all that in Colombia and had a great trip there doing so. So Colombia I feel like I have seen, but I don't know the rest of South America very well. So that probably is top of our list of places to go. I'd love to go to Argentina, and I've only been to Brazil very briefly, so I'd love to go back on that. So I think quite
inspiration
a few, Nicaragua,
for the next novels.
Yeah, maybe.
And then ITV, you could commission those to be shot there, and then it will all work out. I'll look forward to it.
Hopefully. Well, thank you for having me. I've very much enjoyed.
Oh, thank you to Tom. That was so much fun. What a lovely guy. I really enjoyed that chat. Secret Service is available to view on ITVX now. Honestly, it is such a brilliant show. I'll, of course, be back next week with a brand new guest, so don't forget to hit follow or subscribe on your podcast app so that you don't miss an episode. To find out who's joining me next week, come and follow me on Instagram. I'm at Holly Rubenstein. You'll also find me on TikTok at Holly Rubenstein as well. In the meantime, have a fabulous week and safe travels.